Minister, as you know, I've raised the issue of Section 481 tax relief and its connection with rights for workers and trainees, and indeed the condition attached to this film relief given to film production companies that it should provide quality employment and training. And you have said, rightly in my opinion, in previous questions, that that should be defined as a minimum with compliance with the law in terms of workers' rights, employment legislation. So I'm just wondering, can you give us an update on how we're going to ensure that that's actually happening, to ensure that that compliance with the rights of employees is actually being applied in the film industry?
Forward the regulations which are necessary to support the amendments that the Deputy is referring to. I understand that the Deputy has now met with officials on these matters, and I can confirm to Deputy Boyd Barrett that relevant Labour Court interventions raised have now been considered as part of these preparations. Officials from Revenue have also been working with the Department of Business, Enterprise and Innovation in relation to the employment obligations of the producer company and qualifying company for Section 481 companies. The regulations must be made with the consent of myself and my colleague, the Minister for Culture, Heritage and the Gaeltacht, and these and the officials in both our departments are now reviewing the drafts of these regulations.
Progress, and indeed I welcome the engagement, Minister, genuinely. But obviously I'm keen that you know, we make this watertight, and one question I want to really ask is whether there is going to be sanctions applied. I mean, some of the cases I think that your attention has been drawn to, I have one of them, for example, in front of me, which is a ruling on 4 or 5 different pieces of legislation, a complaint taken by a trainee assistant film director to the WRC against Christchurch Productions, and in all cases the production company was found to be in breach. A fine was issued. I have been told the fine has never been paid, and as I understand, the producer who was behind that company is still getting Section 481 tax relief. Now, if that's the case, then what's the point, if you like, of having these rules and regulations? And what's the point of having conditions attached to the film relief if we continue to give it out? Now, I know you're looking at this, but I think we need to move to a situation where it is made absolutely clear to these producers that they will not get a cent more of public money unless they comply with the law. And indeed, there should be a serious question over whether they get any money if they've been shown to be in breach. And I don't understand why that wouldn't happen. And I also think one thing that needs to be clarified with them is the relationship between the producer company that gets the money and the SPV. And because often the producer will say, well, that's an SPV, that's nothing to do with me. I'm not the employer, I have no obligations. And they try in that line of argument. I think you need to say to them, if you get the money from us, Minister, you are responsible for the employees.
Minister's 1 minute.
I do acknowledge to the Deputy, and I did so in the Finance Bill, that I believe there should be a link between if the state makes resources available to a particular company through a tax expenditure in relation to the provision of employment, that we should be confident then that that employment is provided, and we should be confident that there are no repeated issues in relation to the nature of that employment and its compatibility with our laws. Where I differ with the Deputy on, and you and I have debated this before, is I think this sector, by its very, very nature, does have different employment practices, and my sense is we should have different expectations regarding what people's careers can look like and regarding the nature of the employment, because it is, by its definition, project to project. But broadly, I do want to ensure that if Section 481 is in operation, that I can be confident that it is not being used in such a way that is incompatible with the laws of our country being met. That's why I've taken an interest in this, Deputy, which you've acknowledged. And I've touched on the work that's underway now by my officials and Minister Madigan's department to see if we can find a way of getting a balance in relation to these issues. And I hope we can make progress on it, Deputy.
Final question.
Construction is project to project, but the law applies. The Fixed Term Workers Act applies. And developers can't dodge out of their obligations to employees on the basis project to project. Animation is project to project, and yet there's some security, which is also audiovisual, and they are in receipt of Section 481, and these problems don't arise. But in live action film, there's a plea being made by the recipients of large amounts of public money. This is exceptional. No, we can't have these laws apply to us, right? Now, they need to be told they apply. The law is the law, and there is no derogation, Minister, and maybe you could confirm that. There is no derogation, as I understand it, from the fixed term workers' legislation for film. There isn't. And it needs to be made absolutely clear to the people who receive public money that that is the case, and indeed that other employment legislation applies, and indeed that the definition of who's an employee, who's an employer, has to apply to them too. They can't sort of say, oh, the law doesn't apply to us.
Of employment law and how it's employed in different sectors is, as the Deputy might appreciate, is a matter for the Minister for Business, Enterprise and Innovation, and I'm not in a position, therefore, to answer your question. As I have said to you, I think where we do differ is that the availability of tax relief for projects, I don't believe is likely to address all of the issues that you are raising. It does appear to me there are issues in relation to the nature of the industry itself and the application of employment law that need to be dealt with elsewhere. But what I'm trying to do is ensure that the availability of this relief is tied into making sure that it meets the objectives for which the relief is designed. And my officials have not come back to me yet with the draft regulations, but I think they will be doing so soon. And I hope to be in a position then to sign these regulations into law and see how they are implemented.